On Good Morning Nigeria today, we focus on 3 years of the 8th National Assembly.
When the 8th National Assembly was inaugurated in 2015, the leadership promised, and I quote, to use its legislative powers and authority to deliver on citizens' expectations of government and fulfill its responsibilities of lawmaking, oversight, and representation.
Indeed, Kirian, lawmaking, oversight, and representation are key functions of any legislature and a benchmark against which the performance can be evaluated. Now, the Nigerian legislature, in particular, the 8th Assembly, set for itself a 10-point goal encapsulated in a legislative agenda to help it deliver on the people's expectations.
Now, let's turn our attention briefly to the content of the agenda. Both chambers of National Assembly practically promised to be more responsive to the expectations of Nigerians, be more transparent, accountable in their actions, build confidence and improve citizens' legislature relationship, and above all, work in synergy with the other arms of government to deepen the democratic process.
Now, it's 3 years gone, and time, obviously, for some evaluation. Records made available to us by our parliamentary correspondent indicate that so far some 200 bills have been passed, including the Northeast Development Commission Bill, Ease of Doing Business Bill, Constitution Alteration Bills, funding of a Jalkuta company, the Petroleum Industry Governance Bill, and the National Center for Cancer Control, among several others.
But as the saying goes, Kingsley, if wishes were horses, everyone would ride. Life is full of ups and downs, and so it is with the National Assembly. The 3 years journey hasn't been on a bed of roses. There have also been turns. But in the context of legislative agenda, we, however, focus on the values that the 8th National Assembly have brought to bear on the democratic process in the last 3 years on this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. Welcome to the program. My name is Kirian Umayo. Thank you for joining us.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Kirian in also welcoming you to the program. It's been a wet morning here in the Federal Capital Territory, from where, as always, we are broadcasting to you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, Africa's largest television network. In the course of the program, as always, we have our complementary segments, including newspaper review, business, sports, and others. In the meantime, we are having the morning news highlights right now with our colleague, Bintu Aliu Simono. Hi, Bintu.
Good morning, Kingsley and Kirian. Good morning, Nigeria. Here's the morning news. An extraordinary meeting of the State Security Council has ended in the presidential villa with far-reaching measures adopted towards decisively dealing with the various security concerns in parts of the country. President Muhammadu Buhari presided over the meeting, which lasted about 5 hours behind closed doors.
Faced with the president to brief him on the security situation in the country and the way forward. And I think we thank God for that. And we have resolved that we're going to send a team, comprising of the military, the police, the civil defense, and most of these, we are sending them to Zamfara to ensure that we have maximum protection in that place.
Encouraged with the improved security situation and flourishing economy, President Muhammadu Buhari has declared Nigeria safe and secure for tourism. This was while granting audience to the Secretary General of the United Nations World Tourism Organization, Mr. Zreb, who paid him a courtesy visit. President Muhammadu Buhari has restated the resolve of his administration towards consolidating its successes and institutionalizing policies and practices aimed at firmly positioning Nigeria for economic prosperity and sustainable future. This was while hosting some governors to the breaking of Ramadan fast.
We are mindful of them on daily basis, and that we are trying to do what will benefit all, especially in education and healthcare. that we are working for everybody within our constituencies. And the constituency happens to be the whole country.
To the Almighty God, may He who created us from a clot of blood grant you the wisdom, the serenity of mind, and the good health to discharge the onerous responsibility of attending to the affairs of 193 million black people. The hope for the black man rests with the people of Nigeria. May Allah grant you a second term, Amen. The wisdom of Solomon, the patience of Job, the courage and forgiveness of Muhammad Rasulullah in shepherding the affairs of this nation. Most importantly, may Allah grant you good health.
I seize the moment to beseech Almighty Allah to make this regime, this administration, a very successful.
Now, the United Nations set aside 5th of June every year as World Environment Day for reflection on the general state of the earth. As Nigeria joins the rest of the world to celebrate the 2018 edition, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo warned that due to the damage done to the environment in the last few decades, it's most unlikely that a livable place could be handed over to generations to come unless the people make the commitment to having an unpolluted environment.
On our part, as the federal government of Nigeria, we've tried to remain ahead of the curve in planning, in policy and reform. The Ministry of Environment, in collaboration with critical stakeholders, have developed a national strategy for the phasing out of non-biodegradable plastics. The ministry is also developing a national plastic waste recycling program involving the establishment of plastic waste recycling plants across the country in partnership with state governments. A total of 8 plants have already been completed and handed over to the states.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo says Nigeria can only achieve greatness in all sectors if the country utilizes innovative and creative minds of young Nigerians. The Vice President said this at the launch of the first Northeast Humanitarian Innovation Hub in Yola, Adamawa State.
I am completely convinced, and so I believe all of us who are here, that the way forward for our country is innovation and technology, and that the young people who we see every day, who are able to do some of these incredible things, represent the future of our country, and they represent it so dramatically, so graphically, that we're all confident that where we're going is indeed a place of great prosperity and abundance, just having regard to all that we see today from these young people.
Talking legislative matters now, Tuesday's plenary witnessed a joint executive session of the bicameral legislature where issues of concern to the lawmakers were discussed. This is the first time in recent times that the National Assembly convened a joint executive session without recourse to the matters of national discourse at the instance of the executive.
Hereby pass a vote of confidence on the Senate, President, the Speaker, and the entire leadership of the National Assembly. We also hereby reaffirm our earlier resolutions of the vote of no confidence on the Inspector General of Police.
Concerned about alleged illegal deductions from salaries of officials of the Nigeria Police Force, House of Representatives has resolved to set up an ad hoc committee to investigate such deductions.
A state commissioner of police who allegedly received 40,000 naira as salary a few months ago was, upon inquiry, told by the police authorities that he should refer to the IPPIS office in the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation.
The theme for the ongoing 61st edition of the UN World Tourism Commission's for Africa meeting holding in Abuja, Tourism Statistics, a catalyst for development, was the main thrust of deliberations at the seminar session as experts on statistics laid bare what needs to be done if the industry must grow.
has been engaging in consultative meetings with key stakeholders to provide technical assistance and capacity building exercises with the aim of improving the implementation of the tourism satellite accounts.
Everywhere, tourism has a positive impact on reducing poverty. The United Nations Conference for Trade and Development estimates that tourism provides around 8.5% of Africa's GDP and 46% of its exports and 1 out of 14 of its jobs. But it's not given enough credit as transformative sector.
The 62nd UN World Tourism Organization Commission for Africa meeting scheduled for next year. This was part of resolutions reached at the ministerial session of the ongoing 61st meeting of the body in Abuja. Now, good morning, Nigeria. We'll be back after the short break with Kingsley and Kyrian.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem frontally through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way. Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped, we are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime, we bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
The choice of who you marry in life must come from your friends.
You don't reach time where we suppose arrange wife give birth.
No, it must come from your mother.
She's your wife.
Can that thing called love blossom from an arrangement?
It's a different ballgame from a partnership in a conjugal relationship.
Can brides and grooms be truly happy with a stranger forced on them by parents of relatives?
I don't even know him. How can I marry him?
I paid your bride price and your father collected a piece of land from me.
Your rib-cracking comedy tries to answer these questions and serve them with a lot of rib-cracking comedy to you.
Is marriage by force?
Join us this week on Professor John Bull in the episode titled Arranged Marriages.
Thanks for the gift you bought me.
I should be the one thanking you for sending me a gift.
But I never sent you a gift.
I want a piece.
Oh no.
Yes. They were holding peace.
Over and out.
Brought to you by Glow,
the largest data network. Glow Unlimited.
Cadbury Hot Chocolate 3-in-1. A delicious combination of rich cocoa and wholesome goodness of milk. Just add hot water to get an instant chocolatey treat. Cadbury Hot Chocolate 3-in-1. Just add hot water.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the daring and invincible Louis the Mosquito. Responsible for 200 malaria cases all on its own. Is there anything that can kill Louis?
Morning!
Presenting Mortise Power Guard. Its powerful formula kills malaria mosquitoes fast. So, get Mortise Power Guard.
Your perfect family is under threat by germs. Infectious diseases are now the world's biggest killer of adults and children. Every day, 16,000 children under the ages of 5 and thousands of adults die from infectious diseases. These infectious diseases are caused by germs. They are everywhere. An average human being comes in contact with over 1 million germs daily. In unclean water, dirty surfaces, in the toilet, on cuts and wounds, on your clothes. Germs can cause deadly diseases like typhoid, diarrhea, flu, and cough. To protect your family from germs, use the power of Dettol's 1 Cap Full for surface cleaning in your bathing water, in your laundry water, for first aid, to protect your family from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Be Dettol Sure. Endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the NTA network service. Now let's turn to business. World Bank forecasts over 4% growth in developing economies as Central Bank of Nigeria concludes arrangement to commence recycling of the nation's polymer banknote wastes into everyday use plastics for a more sustainable environment. For details of these and more on Business News, here is Joy Ozo.
On Business News, despite recent softening, global economic growth will remain robust at 3.1% in 2018 before slowing gradually over the next 2 years as advanced economic growth decelerates and the recovery in major commodity exports, emerging markets and developing economies levels off, the World Bank said on Tuesday. Growth in emerging markets and developing economies overall is projected to strengthen to 4.5% in 2018 before reaching 4.7% in 2019 as the recovery in commodity exports matures and commodity prices level off following this year's increase. Moving on to other news, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, is in the process of concluding the recycling of the nation's polymer banknote waste into everyday use plastics, such as flower pots, dustbin, shovels, among others, as well as the disposal of its electronic waste in an environmentally sound manner. Governor Godwin Emefiele stated this at an event hosted by the Apex regulator to join the rest of the world to mark the World Environment Day, which had Beat Plastic Pollution as its theme for this year. The bank has also approved the recycling of its paper waste into tissue papers that will be donated to the society as part of its corporate social responsibility.
This celebration, which I believe will be a game changer, will provide an opportunity for the CBN to renew its commitments towards the implementation of the Nigerian Sustainable Banking Principles and the achievement of United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Climate Change Agreement, because the reduction in plastic use will bring about reduction in greenhouse gas emissions and our carbon footprint.
Then there's already, I think, a groundswell of desire to change and to improve on the current situation. So I think the first steps have already been taken. Again, in terms of how we continue to improve, I think there's probably a combination of factors, including potential legislative, technological, economical, educational, and above all else, a human will to want to improve upon the situation. But all those factors need to come together to push the process forward.
There's nothing we can do about that other than to stop it from getting worse, try and reverse some of the years of decline. But I think when you see the enthusiasm of the younger generation, then it gives us old ones a little bit of hope for the future.
Finally, Nigeria's equities market maintains uptrend as the NSE All-Share Index inches up by 2.46%. Next is a graphic representation of the closing figures. With Business News, I'm Joy Uzo.
Thank you very much, Joy Uzo, for the business news on Good Morning Nigeria. Next for us now, we're reviewing the front pages of some of today's newspapers.
Now, our newspaper reviewer, Bayo Atoyebi, is already here with us. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Kylian. Good morning, Kingsley. And good morning, Nigeria.
Bayo, good to see you. We have this, it's been a wet morning in the Federal Capital Territory. We have just about 4 papers to review, but there are stories that are common to the front pages of the papers, stories out of the National Assembly as well as out of the presidency. Let's begin with the Punch newspaper. Punch, we just go from top to bottom, and then Bayo can take a look at the headlines. The Punch newspaper, above the nameplate, you have 3 headlines there. President says Nigeria now safe and secure. Obi disagrees. That's on page 42. Defense Minister wants anti-open grazing laws suspended and 6 safe routes for herdsmen. That's on page 12. Buhari's medical bills can't be released without his consent, and that's according to Federal High Court. Details of that story can be found on page 7. Now, 2 earpieces beside the nameplate of the Punch newspaper. Federal government fulfills housing promise to Johannes Bonfere, 22 years after he was coach of the Super Eagles. Details of that story can be found on page 45. Suspended SEC chief Guarzo arraigned for fraud and granted bail, page 42. Now, the lead story comes with a kicker: herdsmen killings and alleged harassment. National Assembly threatens to invoke its powers against Buhari, and the writer there is a long one. There's an excerpt from the resolution of the joint session of the National Assembly yesterday. The president must be held accountable for the actions of his appointees and must be ready to sanction those that carry out any act which will ridicule or endanger our country and democracy. Now, below the, let me just take these other headlines and then you comment. Below the photograph of the Punch newspaper, you have other headlines. Nigeria clears foreign airlines $600 million trapped funds. And suspected Fulani headers killed 3 SARS operatives and 8 farmers in Nasarawa. Of a robbery, anti-Saraki protesters call for thorough probe, and bodies of Abuja flood victims recovered. And those are the headlines from the place that we're taking right now.
All right, I have the Nigerian Tribune here, and the main headline below the nameplate is a crack in the National Assembly over threat to remove Buhari. With riders here, as lawmakers give 12-point condition after emergency joint session, reaffirm vote of no confidence on IGP. We are not part of resolution, parliamentary support group says. Now, National Assembly resolutions vindicators, says the PDP. And as long as we are alive, nobody can remove Buhari, Kazaure. Now, signatures being collected for impeachment, says Guldaji. Saraki includes session with U.S. ambassador. The story is on page 3 of the Nigerian Tribune. Now, besides the photograph on the front page of Nigerian Tribune, we have some striking headlines there. Ekiti, INEC identifies 299 flashpoints. That's against the backdrop of the July elections in that state. The story is also on page 3. Suspend anti-grazing law, Defense Minister tells Security Council. Now, also page 3 has that story. Now, federal government approves 2,000 special security personnel for Zamfara. Bayo.
Yes, well, the Senate was due for plenary yesterday, but it was suspended for an emergency joint session with the House of Representatives. And they ruled out 10 conditions which they insist that must be fulfilled, or else they will be compelled to invoke their constitutional power. Some of the issues they raised include security agencies must be given orders to curtail killings, harassment by executive of perceived political opponents or people with contrary opinions in the legislature or judiciary must stop. They also say that there must be strict adherence to the rule of law. And on corruption, they said government should show sincerity by not being selective and also prosecute its appointee that have cases to answer. The other concern was point number 8, where they say both chambers voted confidence in the National Assembly leadership. However, they affirmed their vote of no confidence in the Inspector General of Police on the grounds that he does nothing than presiding over killings of Nigerians, consistently framing up perceived political opponents of the president, and he disregards authority of the executive and the legislature. However, there are fallouts from that closed door open session, joint session. A group that described itself as parliamentary support group says National Assembly will evoke, sorry, they say that the Senate and the House of Representatives met in the situation whereby the order and resolution that was passed was drafted by an ally of the Senate President in the House of Representatives. And it was nearly all the PDP members that spoke. The APC members declined joining issues so as not to cause a rowdy session. However, they stressed every member and senator who has corruption or criminal allegations should clear his or her name without dragging the entire National Assembly into the matter. They also say that caution must be exercised not to heap up the Nigerian polity unnecessarily. The People's Democratic Party has also lended its voice. They say the resolution of the National Assembly clearly vindicates the position of that political party. Well, the other issue is about the anti-grazing law. The Minister of Defense has opined that Benue and Taraba State should suspend the anti-grazing law. During a briefing at the end of security meeting, he says Nigerian police and the Departments of State are to prosecute all the suspects arrested in various clashes between farmers and herders. He, however, advised that there is need to employ other channels to reduce tension by suspending the implementation of the anti-grazing law. He also pointed out that the Minister of that National Commission for the Control of Small Arms and Light Weapons should be established. Meanwhile, he indicated that incidents of herdsmen and farmers' clashes are reducing. Furthermore, on the issue of Boko Haram, he says that their activities have been contained and there is Operation Last Hold, which is flushing them out of the Chad region. Finally, on the operation, another operation, Safe Haven, is to be established in Jos, and it's to take care of kidnapping, abduction that has become very rampant in part of Kaduna, Zamfara, and Kebbi states.
All right, Bayo, let's return to the papers. Blueprint newspaper. Blueprint, the stories that we've read from the Punch and the other Nigerian Tribune, you also have them on the front page of the Blueprint, plus other stories. The lead, of course, has to do with the restatement by the Defense Minister urging the suspension of the anti-grazing law, as well as the National Assembly asking President Buhari to act now or otherwise, and together with the riders. But let's take one of the two earpieces beside the nameplate of the Blueprint newspaper. Another Kogi civil servant slumps and dies. That's on page 40. And we come to the foot of the front page of the Blueprint newspaper. Just below the photograph, it says TB, that's tuberculosis, kills over 1.6 million annually, and to cost $1 trillion loss in 2050. That's according to the UN. Nigerians consume 20 billion cigarette sticks annually. That's according to the minister. 20 billion cigarette sticks. And 3 Nasarawa policemen killed in Agatu and headers clash. And the story on the embattled SEC Director General, that's Gwazo and Garuba, have been docked and granted bail. That story is in greater detail on page 17. NBA president, according to this headline, is flattering a court order. Details you can find on page 18.
Is that report you read earlier on about demonstrations in Offa? On Monday, a group that says they are in support of Dr. Bukola Saraki demonstrated. But yesterday, another group, larger than the earlier one, also demonstrated, calling for justice. They say our people are shocked that 3 of the alleged robbers followed Dr. Saraki when he came to pay a condolence visit. However, a statement has also been issued by the Offa Descendants Union, and it says that being apolitical, it does not want to be dragged into the dirty waters of politics. Nigeria police has a lawful duty to investigate criminal matters. It implores the police to discreetly carry out their investigation without fear or favor. Meanwhile, the nation had published a survey by the news agency of Nigeria estimating the reaction from people about the hula baloo, about the arms robbery and the cultism in Ilorin. Dr. Amoda Aluko, the Tafida of Ilorin, says that Saraki could never be involved in robbery. However, it is expedient for him to clear his name since suspect allegedly mentioned his name. He opined that the police should do its duty on issues of cultism also in Ilorin. A lawyer, Tunde Jimo, urged the public to stop politicizing the matter. Nigerians must be patient for thorough investigation and a fair hearing. A member of the Kwara State House of Assembly says police initially had a negative political, the police move initially had a negative political implication. However, he's now insisting that people they were trying to convict people in the court of public opinion. This will never work. He says that the issue should be taken up after investigation and dealt with in the court.
All right, now let's go to the editorial for today. It's from the Daily Sun. Now it says states over-dependence on federal allocations. And of course, the Vice President bared his mind on that, saying that it will be extremely difficult for most states in the country to survive without the monthly allocation. But let me take 1 or 2 lines from there. How far the states can go, can stay afloat with overdependence on the monthly handouts from the federal government. That should be a matter of great concern to all Nigerians. Official figures from the National Bureau of Statistics says that the states generate about 931.23 billion naira as internally generated revenue.
Yes, that figure you gave is the internally generated revenue by 36 states of the Federation, and it is just about 15% of what they require, and 85% of their required revenue is gotten from the Federation account. And so the editorial is saying that states must begin to look for alternative means of sourcing their internally generated revenue so that government can run effectively. You will recall that the federal government had on several occasions to churn out bailout funds to support state government from paying salaries. And this has been on even in fact before 2015. A large part of the initiative of the administration then were towards paying salaries. And that has been a big challenge. The Federation Account Allocation Committee has been the only source of alternative revenue. However, there are opportunities that are being missed. There's hardly any state in this federation that is not endowed with solid mineral, several of them, and they are in commercial quantity.
The
but there must
does
be
not allow states to actually harness all the resources in there.
These are the issues that the National Assembly should take up, so that the jurisdiction of exploiting solid minerals can be expanded, so states can be viable. Not only that, there's hardly any state in this country that if you grow crops, they won't prosper. During the administration of President Olusegun Obasanjo, I recall that 10 million was given to each state to concentrate on the crop that is predominant in his area. The idea was to diversify the total dependence on petroleum towards agriculture. And that, I think, that impetus has now been put in place, and currently, the percentage of agricultural input, particularly by way of export and revenue yielding for Nigeria, has increased. And so if states go in that direction, there will be a lot more success than depending on Federation Accounts Allocation Committee.
Just thanks a lot. I know you have reviewed the editorial, which is usually our last, but there's a human interest story, pretty sad as well, that we just want to access from page 30 of Blueprint newspaper. Page 30 of Blueprint newspaper. It says, crocodile kills Ethiopian pastor. It says a Protestant pastor who was baptizing followers near a lake in southern Ethiopia has been killed by a crocodile. He was baptizing some 80 persons. When, after baptizing the first person, he passed on to another. All of a sudden, a crocodile jumped out of the lake and grabbed the pastor, pushing aside the person he was baptizing. All efforts to save him failed.
Sad one.
Very sad. Bayo?
Super Eagles say they will win today's match against Czech Republic because it will boost their psychology when going to World Cup. They are playing their first World Cup match 10 days ago.
I want them to begin their win when we get to Russia.
That's right. That's what we'd like to see. And by the way, Bayo, we'd like to thank you. You know, Kieran wasn't around at the end of the European soccer season when his team, of course, lost almost invariably. He's been whining. All right, so let's take a short break now. When we return, it will be 3 years of the 8th National Assembly, and that's our main topic for conversation this morning.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There's no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
The NTA Television College Jos admission forms for diploma program in film and television production, television engineering technology, broadcast journalism, and degree programs in mass communication, television journalism, and mass communication television production is now on sale. The sale of forms will commence 14th May and run to 13th August 2018 at the cost of 7,500 Naira only per form, payable through the remitter platform in favor of NTA Television College Jos. Forms can be obtained from all marketing officers in NTA state capital stations, zonal centers, training directorate of the NTA headquarters Abuja, and the office of the academic secretary of the NTA Television College. Applicants are required to possess 5 credits in GCE, SSCE in relevant areas of study, including English and mathematics, in not more than 2 sittings. All completed forms attached with photocopies of credentials must be submitted on or before the 13th of August 2018 to the stations where the forms were obtained. For further inquiries, please contact the office of the academic secretary on these numbers. Announcer, Registrar.
Brought us as usual.
As usual. You have no problem.
For the three
You are welcome, sir.
As usual, yeah.
You take that one. You take that one. You don't understand? We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have.
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice. Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. to come to chocolate rice of made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made. Correct. How they are cook it. Correct. Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Dettol team is visiting schools to teach children how to protect themselves from diseases. Do you know how we get illnesses like diarrhea, cough, and cold? No! They are spread through germs which are everywhere. You collect germs that cause diseases. You pick up germs from any surface, like when you don't wash your hands after going to the toilet, while playing. And then you can get sick because of germs. That's why you need to fight germs to stay healthy by washing your hands and taking your bath with Dettol soap. to protect from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Wash your hands. What you have to do is bath yourself. Get a soap every day. Wash your hands.
Well, thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria for today. And our topic of conversation today is the third year of the 8th National Assembly. But before we introduce our guests, we will take this background report by our correspondent, Oyemi Ajayi.
The vote by 57 senators out of 109 brought in Senator Bukola Saraki as the Senate President of the 8th Senate and the Chairman of the 8th Assembly, while Yakubu Dogara emerged the Speaker of the House of Representatives with 182 votes against 174, kick-starting the activities of the 8th National Assembly in the country after the inauguration on June 9, 2015. The National Assembly comprises 469 members elected across the 6 geopolitical zones of Nigeria, with the House of Representatives consisting of 360 members, while the Senate has a total of 109 members, with 6 of whom are women. With the majority of the parliamentarians to be members of the governing All Progressives Congress (APC), it would be expected that the 8th National Assembly will enjoy a better relationship. Bills have been passed so far by the National Assembly, including the Not Too Young to Run Bill, which has been assented to by the President, the Petroleum Industry Governance Bill (PIGB), the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit Bill, among others. The National Assembly has confirmed 227 out of 240 nominees that it received from the executive. Last year, the word budget pardon appeared in the political lexicon when a member of the House of Representatives, Abdulmumuni Jibrin, accused the National Assembly of pardoning the budget, meaning increasing the figures in the budget. Also in 2017, it was recorded that the budget went missing before being found again. Well, 2018 started on another note with much altercations between the executive and the legislature. It saw the refusal of some top government functionaries to appear before the committees when invited. Likewise, the controversy over the arrest of the senator representing Kogi West, Dino Melaye, was another feature in this assembly. Some members were as well suspended for misconduct. For the first time in the history of Nigerian democracy, the mace, which is the symbol of authority, and the Senate was snatched away by some thugs who managed to enter the chamber during the session. The mace was later returned after being found by the police. Senate President Bukola Saraki noted that contrary to public perception that the National Assembly is being overfunded, increase in legislative activities, especially that of the 8th Senate, has created funding constraints for the legislative arm of government. With 3 years of legislation by the 8th National Assembly, how well have they fared and what more needs to be done? Guest on Good Morning Nigeria will be answering these questions and more shortly.
Thank you very much, Oyemi Ajayi, for that background report. We already have guests with us here in the studios as well as at one of our network centers. First, we'd like to, at this time, welcome distinguished Senator Aliu Sabi Abdullahi. He's chairman of the Senate Committee on Media and Public Affairs. Senator Sabi Abdullahi, good morning and pleasure to have you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Also here with us in the studios is Honorable Abdul Razak Namdas. He is chairman of the House Committee on Media and Publicity. Honorable Namdas, pleasure to have you too on the program.
Thank you so much.
And Ezenwa Nwago is a regular face on Good Morning Nigeria. He is chairman, Partners for Electoral Reforms. And you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you. And of course, from our Benin studio, we are being joined by Professor Benson Osandalo. He is of the History Department, University of Benin. Prof, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning. All right, well, gentlemen, let's begin the evaluation. Incidentally, over the 3 years or so that the 8th National Assembly has been in existence, we've had all the 3 guests on Good Morning Nigeria, together, of course, with our guests at the Benin Network Studios. Beginning with distinguished Senator Sabi Abdullahi, how has the journey been? You listened to our background report, ups and downs, and a lot of flack as well.
Well, I would call it very interesting because we're in a democracy. And in a democracy, you expect various interests to rub minds, to pull and pull. And that is why, for me, I always say democracy is a negotiated process. It's not something that ends with one event or one activity. And so I think for the past 3 years, the National Assembly, as the face of democracy, has been involved in ensuring that it not only carry out its work, but it also creates milestones. And I think that is one thing for me that the 8th National Assembly will be remembered for. Beyond the few negatives that people tend to, overblow, there are very good, work that has been done by this 8th National Assembly. And in many instances, people tend to even want to sweep them under the carpet. And I think that is not fair to this 8th National Assembly. I think in the course of this discussion today, it will be very clear that facts on the ground are not supporting some of the, issues people tend to throw out all the time.
All right, thank you. Senator Namdas, Honorable Namdas, in line with the assessment that we're making after 3 years of the 8th Assembly, and of course you listened to the background report where we had several issues, some cracks here and there. What's your own assessment of the National Assembly?
Well, I will be direct because of time. For the House of Representatives that I speak for, I know that in the last 3 years we have introduced over 1,500 bills, out of which about 284 of these bills have been referred to committees, and 222 of these bills have been successfully passed. And we have also engaged in sectoral debates in the National Assembly as part of our legislative agenda. We have made several oversights, one of which stands out. I know that the Speaker visited Ajakuta Steel, where we realized that about 98% of the steel is almost completed, only 2% is remaining. However, it has not taken off. These are part of the issues we'll be able to discover. The Speaker also traveled out to Italy to be able to discuss with the leadership because of our children that always travel immigration issues. We have lost several number of lives of our youths, over 250 in some instances in the sea for trying to illegal migrations, and we'll be able to come back to educate them. And a number of issues like a budget. For the first time in the history of National Assembly, we are, as elected representatives, should be able to work on the budget. But because we want openness, we have introduced what is called public hearings, where we meet with our colleagues in the Senate and then invite civil society organizations, invite academics and experts to discuss so that we can be able to take part of the issues and join. So I think in the course of discussion we will be unveiling. I think we have our own low periods as human beings. It has been there. We took off with some kind of on a shaky ground because when we wanted to put our leadership in place, but we were able to overcome it. I think we are good to go.
All right, Honorable Namdas, thank you very much. Let's bring in again Senator Wesabi Aguai. Honorable Namdas already referred to the very strong headwinds that the National Assembly encountered at takeoff. But still, you came up with a legislative agenda, and there are a number of items that are embedded in the legislative agenda. How faithful has the National Assembly been to the execution of the legislative agenda?
Well, thank you very much. Let me say that very straight, the legislative agenda had some key objectives, one of which is to review the way we work as legislators, and I think that has gone very far in helping us to achieve several milestones that we have talked about. The other aspect is that it also talked about supporting diversification of the Nigerian economy, creating employment for youth, and looking at obsolete laws that have been there in our legal environment, and supporting the war against corruption, and also providing support for economic development. And I think in all of these, then electoral reform. So in all of these, we have gone very far in many of the things we set to do. Let me take the economic aspect. we came up with the National Assembly Business Environment Roundtable, where we identified over 54 laws that needed to be worked on. And we prioritized them in accordance with their importance, from high importance, mid importance, and low importance. And we have taken most of these bills, and they have actually gone through the mill, and some of them have been passed. For example, the collateral registry, the credit bureau aspect, and all of these have gone to help Nigeria in the jump we saw in the ease of doing business. Now, the other aspect is that we have, the Railway, Act, which has been a very old, law as far back as 1954, and we came up with a new law which says that we should divide the operators and the regulator, and that also is there. We have the Federal Roads Authority, Federal Road Funds. All of this is aimed at supporting the infrastructural, growth of this country. We all agree that the infrastructural deficit is clearly a very big constraint in moving our economy forward. Now, the other aspect that is very important here is the PIGB. And in terms of how we work, this is one of the bills that benefited from our changing how we work, because we realized that there are contentious issues, and so we broke it into 4 parts along with our colleagues in the House. And at the end of the day, we passed the PIGB. Now we have the fiscal component, the host community, and then the other one dealing with the governance. Now, administration. I think it's the governance we pass first. The host community, administration, and fiscal component have already, the public hearing was held just some few days ago, and we have every assurance that this will also get to the end of the tunnel in terms of being passed by the National Assembly. Now, this is something very important because that bill has suffered setbacks year on, almost for the 19 years we've talked about. Now, the other aspect is when you look at, the intervention we have tried to do in the area of security. When it comes to budgeting, we are very critical in looking at areas that we know must have very high impact. And so every year, deficit in terms of what is required by security agents, last year, 2017, and even this year, we have given very high, support to that. And in our own case, we have engaged the security agencies. We've had a very beautiful and robust discussions with them. We are expecting them to come up with additional information for a supplementary budget, for example, because the spate of killings is very worrisome. If people are dying, then a lot of things will not happen. So we are concerned about that, and we are also intervening through another aspect of our legislative work. Now, if you look at the sum total of all of these things, it means when it comes to budget, I mean the work we do, legislation, we are looking at things that will have direct impact on our citizens, which means if you want to assess it from being pro-poor, I would say most of our bills, even some of the motions we bring to the chamber for discussions, are things that will have direct bearing on the citizens, because we realize we are the voice of the people and we must continue to speak for the people.
All right. Before we bring in Nwago and Professor Osadalo in Benin, let me return to Honorable Namdas. Perhaps we may like to go into specifics with respect to the bills already passed by the House of Representatives, just as your colleague has enumerated, because that will lead us into specifics later in the course of this conversation.
Well, I want to join to tell him that actually, like the PIG bill that he mentioned, he just told you that we just had the public hearing. These are things that we also have passed in the House of Representatives. You should know that the practice of the National Assembly is that once a bill comes, and it also have to happen on our side, and or else if one dies at one point, it means the bill is already dead on arrival. If it originates from the House of Representatives, it has to have concurrence on the Senate side. It originates from the Senate. And we, interestingly, we were able to come out one of the most important bills, that is the Not Too Young bill, Not Too Young to Run bill. That has already been passed and assented by the President. It is something that when it came to on the floor of the House, it was really given a kind of attention. And today we have successfully opened space for our younger generation, my kind of generation, to now come up and contest election. Although there are issues that people are afraid of. It's not just about opening the space. Some people are talking about the resources to be able to muster and get into elected offices, but we told them specifically, I come from a very poor background, but it was not money that brought me to the National Assembly. My father happens to be a primary school teacher, so it was not as if I had anywhere. So if I can be here, any other Nigerian can also happen to be here. We have passed legislations on terms of employment, generating employment for the youth. That even a motion, we even did what is called a state of emergency in the area of unemployment, so that at least our youth should be employed. Today I come from the Northeast. Virtually you have crisis in the Northeast, the Boko Haram in the Northeast, cattle rustling in the North Central, the Niger Delta crisis, we have herdsmen crisis. All this is as a result, partly because of the fact that we have too much youths that are not gainfully employed. I think we have so many, about 222. I think if I said I would narrate, it's too many, but I think these are some of the outstanding bills that we've been able to pass.
All right, thank you very much, Honorable Namdas. You were talking earlier that, say, young people like you. So did you contest the election when you had not reached the threshold as enshrined in the law before now? But that's a joke, by the way. We will come back to you later on. Let's bring in now Ezenwa Nwango. Ezenwa Nwango, give us your broad strokes of your assessment of the 3 years that we've had of the 8th National Assembly.
Well, I think the National Assembly has earned some bragging rights now. Specifically for me, I would forgive them of every other sin for passing the Not Too Young to Run bill. But it's also significant to know that it was a struggle. Because that bill, when they went for their retreats in Lagos, that bill was not part of what was. It had to take a lot of agitation and struggle, visits, to get that to pass. So it's important to underscore the fact that that bill was not a gift. It was the product of citizen engagement, resilience, and persistence. And what that also goes to show is that when citizens want something done and they insist on it and they want it done, those who represent them will naturally have to yield to that. I think also that the progress around the PIG is also commendable. More importantly also is clearly the fact that in some sense the National Assembly seems to be doing some work around listening, around opening up in terms of engagement. The only snag has been the part in which they scrutinize other people's budgets, but their own budgets are not open for anybody to interrogate. But in terms of engagement, there is more robust engagement with the National Assembly. Distinguished Senator talked about reforming old laws. We are not also seeing a lot of coordination with agencies. For instance, the Law Reform Commission should be able to help the National Assembly in dealing, because that is what they're established for. We've not seen that robust engagement in that area. So when we deal with what is set out in the legislative agenda in terms of what has been achieved, I'm not sure that we've done a lot in terms of dealing with the issue of obsolete laws. Then you talked about supporting the anti-corruption fight. That's a very low for the National Assembly, very, very low. The poker bill is suffering. The Whistleblowers Act is suffering. Many of the sunshine anti-corruption laws that are in the National Assembly have passed from 5th to 6th to 7th, and in the 8th right now. By August, as you know, most of what you will see as pure legislation will end, and most of those bills will naturally stall. So whether they have been able to achieve much of what is in the legislative agenda is something that we're going to interrogate. But no doubt about it, for me, the real thing is that the focus in which they dealt with the Not Too Young to Run and the PIG has given me some level of null in terms of how I engage the 8th National Assembly.
All right, thank you. Now, let's go over to Benin, where we have Professor Benson Sadelo, the historian. Sir, you have listened to two members of the National Assembly here with us, and of course, Mr. Nwagu, who has just spoken. Let's get your own assessment of the 8th National Assembly with respect to legislative agenda and, of course, what I've been able to achieve within this period.
One way in which we can begin to assess the tested performance of the National Assembly is to establish a basis on which we evaluate and assess them. First and foremost, we look at the issue of development agenda of the nation. And secondly, we look at the pursuit of our national interest. For example, if we take our national interest, number one, we're talking about our national survival and security. Number two, we're looking at economic growth and development and power of the state. Number three, we're looking at the provision of critical infrastructure. Number four, we are looking at the preservation of our culture and its heritage. Or number five, we're looking at the extent of which they have demonstrated patriotism and nationalism in addressing national issues. Now let us go to the development agenda of Nigeria. Since the 9th of June 2015, when the Assembly was inaugurated, all of us will agree that the inauguration and emergence of the leadership of the National Assembly was characterized by drama and intrigues. That has continued up to today to impart on its ability to contribute to the national agenda because of several interests. Secondly, let us look at the number of bills that have been passed. We have a list of several bills that have been passed, but in 2016, the president assented to 18 of them. 2017, 18 also. And this year, the president has also assented to about 8. All of this goes to show that the National Assembly is doing its best and is working in the interest of the nation, first to promote peace, to promote order and good governance of the country. However, there are a number of issues and problems. We also need to understand from what our distinguished senator has said and the distinguished right honorable member has also said. When you place the National Assembly in the context of national politics, how do you understand their interest vis-a-vis the interests of the nation? We are concerned about the dividends of democracy in this country. We are concerned about how democracy imparts on the lives of the ordinary citizen. We are also concerned about the understanding of this democracy as constitutional democracy, which is a model of representation that we practice in Nigeria. How do the ordinary citizens feel about the impact of all of them? Unfortunately, what we hear and what we also see them do is, apart from debating in the hallowed chambers, they go about distributing all forms of items. They consider dividends of democracy to poor masses in their constituencies. After that little bread, what happens? So let us begin to judge our National Assembly vis-a-vis the kind of issues that they are dealing with in their debate and how heavy the debates are. 3, ideas. You see, ideas make the world go round. The executive, for example, has the responsibility to run the day-to-day affairs of this country, or of the nation. What ideas do we get from the National Assembly to support the executive in his duties? For example, the war on corruption. How is the Assembly assisting the executive to fighting this war? Number 3, let us look at institutional reforms. In this 8th Assembly, we are looking at 3 years, and the Assembly is still not able to ensure that institutions in this country are reformed to create some form of stability for the polity. Rather, emphasis on individuals, on personalities. In other words, we must look at this individual before we act. It's not so. Let us see how institutional reforms can enhance the performance of the National Assembly and other institutions of governance in the country. I strongly believe, as they have said, that the National Assembly has done so well, at least for the past 3 years. What happens in the next 1 year? The truth is that the National Assembly has enormous responsibilities, but there are cracks within. And I'm sure if they look at it critically, they should be able to resolve it, those cracks, not in the interest of individuals or parties, but in the interest of our nation, Nigeria. Our concern is the display of patriotism and nationalism in the discharge of the responsibilities, the duties, the functions of the National Assembly, the Senate, as well as the House of Representatives. If that is done, we are looking towards a very healthy democracy. We are looking forward towards what we may also describe as 2019 healthy elections. But however, before I conclude and others coming, we have had cases of missing budgets. We have had cases of delays of work to be done in the National Assembly, in the Holy Chambers, and for some reasons, which I can't explain here, which has to do with politics, members dilly-dally on these critical matters. Or we also look at some other cracks that has to do with the reordering of the elections of 2019. Issues that borders on whose interest? National interest or interest of individual senators and members of the House of Reps who are thinking of what to do in the Ninth Assembly. So these are matters that are of great concern to all of us. In the end, it's our democracy that we are concerned with, and it must survive. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Salolo from Benin Network Studios. We'll come back to you. I'm sure that Senator Sabi and Honorable Namdas, you've listened to the other two guests. Perhaps you want to immediately respond to some of them. I have another line of questioning, but I think it's useful for you to respond because these are some of the public concerns that have been articulated by the other guests.
Okay, thank you very much. I think first let me go back to Mr. Nwago. I quite appreciate the point he has raised. But let me say that even for the not too young to run bill, it's not an executive bill. It's a bill that emanated from the House of Representatives. And I must say to you that in the House of Reps, in the Senate, it also has somebody who sponsored the same thing. And our, leadership, the Senate President, Senator Bukola Saraki, and the Speaker, the Right Honorable Dogara, they all personally did physical presence to support the promoters of that particular bill. So I think for me, even when we went for the debate, I must confess to you that we had a coalition of people who have interest in this subject matter, and we supported it vigorously to ensure that it went through. And remember, we also had a retreat with the speakers of the various state houses of assembly, and we impressed it upon them that it is time for us to open the space. So I will not agree that we are lackadaisical or uninterested in this. I appreciate the role of the promoters, the civil society organization, the youth in various forms, and I will say it is just a very beautiful collaboration and cooperation between all interested parties to see that this thing actually saw the light of the day. The other aspect I would like to react to is when you talk about the anti-corruption issue. We have done so much in this respect. Remember when we had issues having to do with the Edgar Group, we came up with the Nigerian Financial Intelligence,
Edgemont.
Edgemont.
Yes.
We actually came up with that particular bill, and between the two chambers, it has gone back and forth with issues that are technically being raised, and the bill came back. It got accelerated hearing because of the importance that we saw. If Nigeria is suspended from that group, that it is going to portend some danger to us. So I think there are flash areas where we have actually paid very much attention, and even the whistleblower bill, we've actually passed it on our own side. And there are some, like you said, issue of concurrence, and this has to do with the level of work or the schedules that they already have. So let me say that we are not just folding our arms. Now, to some of the comments raised by Prof, I want to appreciate him for that. I'm somebody who believes in establishing a baseline against which you should assess somebody, not just coming from nowhere. And I must say that if you look at the legislative agenda which I spoke about earlier, the 54 bills we talked about having to do with business environment, they are all receiving various levels of attention. I don't know specifically the number that have already been passed, third reading, waiting for either concurrence, or had even actually been concurred and have been transmitted. We've not done that, kind of analysis. But all I know is, in terms of our work, these are the ones we call the high priority bills. And I think for the economy, we call them economic priority bills. We have about 20 of them, and all of them have gone through the mill. So I don't think we are unaware of the target we have set for ourselves. Now, in terms of what Prof has talked about, definitely, if you look at the way we do our work, we have decided at any point in time, things that are of high economic importance, of security importance, they get precedence in listing on our order paper. And so in many instances, we are not unmindful of them, and that is why there was a particular instance where we actually have to suspend the entire order paper to take the issue of security, which was what led to the security summit. And subsequently, when some events unfolded, we were supposed to take the report of the security summit, but we kept it aside to invite the security chiefs to get more insight. And we have done that. Based on the submissions from them, we are also hoping to have another day to discuss robustly all the aspects of the security concern. Now, let me also say that if you look at the obsolete bills we are talking about, I think it was Nwago that was talking about maybe the Law Reform Commission. We have actually identified the constraint that particular commission is having in terms of its law, and we have actually reviewed that law, because by the nature of the law, it is something that will require that almost every year you come back to legislate for them to go on to start the review. So what we have done now is to review that particular act such that they don't need to go back and forth again. Every time they see a law that requires the review, they'll be able to do that. And in terms of working with critical stakeholders, we are working with Nigerian, the civil society group, the Nigerian Bar Association, and in fact for the National Assembly Business Environment Roundtable, I think they call is it the business chapter or so of the Nigerian Bar Association.
Business law section.
Yeah, yes, they are working very critically with us. And I must say that we recognize this country has pockets of expertise in various locations, and we try to tap on them as consultants, as advisors, as partners in everything we do, because we believe if these laws are to serve Nigerian citizens, then Nigerian citizens must actively participate. And I think for the first time, like my colleague said, even in terms of the budgeting, we have brought in the civil society, the Nigerian populace themselves, through the public hearing we have now introduced for the budget. So I think there are quite a lot that we are doing, and we will continue to listen, like he has said. We listen more to our citizens, and whatever we believe that they want, definitely as their representative, we must take it very seriously.
All right, and in the course of competition this morning, we'll also be visiting some other critical issues with respect to how the National Assembly is run. And Honorable Namdas, maybe you would also like to comment on the submission of
my
Prof.
colleague has almost trashed the matter. Just to add on the not too young to run bill, I want to appreciate Nwago, the fact that it's true also that it is an issue of struggle. But just as he said, it actually emanated from the House of Representatives, and also in the Senate we have sponsors. And but I want to agree that there were struggles in it, and Nigerians have come forth to say, look, we are interested. And since both of us are on ground, it has really helped in the process and getting to where we are. I want to talk about the obsolete laws, not even the reform issue. I remember in the House of Representatives, the Speaker of the House of Representatives set up a committee made of jurists and a lot of civil society organizations. They looked onto our laws, and they came out with the fact that there were certain laws that need to be repealed, others need to be amended. We had to even introduced 130 bills in one day, which was a very significant one. And these 130 bills that were introduced had to do with amending, repealing, because we needed, for you to have an effective change, you need some laws that actually can live with time. So that was what we were able to achieve. And when you hear, listen to what the Prof said about budget delays, I think this has been what has been, we've been hearing from Nigerian populace. These budgets are delayed by members of National Assemblies. This is 6 months. They've not listened to that. And I want to put it in perspective. Nigerians should appreciate that the budget is a law. It runs for 12 calendar months. Whether you pass it in June, it must run for 12 months. It's not as if, but people have a feeling that if you pass a bill in May, and then the president assents to it either in some May or in June, some people feel that it will work from June to December. I think it's not true. But that is not to say that because we can run for 12 calendar months, we will unduly delay the budget. That's not the spirit. The issue is that when budget comes, it's a process. This budget will be laid by the president. It's not even a budget, it's a proposal that is laid by the president. It is the National Assembly that converts it to a budget because it's a bill. We do first reading, second reading, committee to committees, and then they debate it, and then so the process is long. And I can assure you, each time you are able to, assuming we get this thing in January and you pass it in February, Nigeria will tell you, look, you see, they've collected something. They didn't even go through, not to scrutinize the budget. It has been passed. So when you scrutinize and say, look, let us make observation. Let us call civil society organization. Let us call academics. Let us call people who are very knowledgeable in the budget to help the legislature achieve what you want. People say it is being delayed because we have been doing this, we've been doing that. I think that is fairly not true. If we had not allowed this budget to run the 12-month calendar cycle, even the level of implementation by the executive wouldn't have reached the level it has. Because as I speak to you, this 2017 budget, what level did we get? Not above, slightly above 50. Even when the president came to the National Assembly, he said, look, I will try as much as possible to ensure that this budget will get 50% implementation. And actually, we are not looking for 50%. What Nigerians are asking for is about 100% implementation. Although we know there are challenges, there's no way you can have 100% because budget is just an estimate. You could run into troubled waters. You will have issues with that. I think, to me, we have done fairly okay, and I'm not saying there's no for improvement because we are human beings.
All right, thank you very much, Honorable Abdulrazak Namdas. You've opened up the discussion on the budget. We'll come to that shortly. In fact, on Monday, Kieran, on the program, we had the Minister of State for Budget and National Planning and other guests discussing the budgeting process in the last 3 years. And one of the major complaints, of course, one of the issues had to do with the undue delays. Undue delays is not a matter of just scrutinizing the proposals brought by the executive branch. It's also the knock-on effect it has on the rest of the economy. There are all kinds of, there are subsectors of the economy that are awaiting the signaling from the Appropriation Act, knowing what to do. And we have seen those consequences right now. We'll continue with the conversation, of course, plus taking your tweets after this short break.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Can I see your particulars, sir?
Officer, my particulars no dey here.
In that case, you'll have to come with me to the police station.
Officer, which levels? Where I for find you something make you take arrange your weekend.
What? Offense number 1, driving without particulars. Offense number 2, trying to bribe an officer of the law.
I won't harass Nigerians or take bribe. Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
And we thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria for today. And of course, we are looking at the 8th National Assembly and how it has performed with respect to all the aspects of legislation that, of course, translates to democracy dividend along the line. But now Nigerians are beginning to make comments on this conversation, and we would like to read some of the tweets that we have received this morning, beginning with Olowo Kere Olajide. He says the National Assembly did well in the activities but did nothing to their bogus salary.
I'm sure the honorable numbers and the distinguished senator will react to that with regard to their fat salaries. Habila Kwara Zakshi has this tweet. The National Assembly hasn't met the expectations of Nigerians, even though they are a relative level of harmony irrespective of their political parties, but they didn't utilize that to ensure that the dividends of democracy are given to the people. But to some extent, they've tried.
Now, Chibuzo Jonathan says, yes, they have done well, especially Dino and Shehu, for speaking out well like it's done in every democratic governance.
And we have this from Akeju Olagbaju. The 8th National Assembly is fair but heavily polarized. The true separation of powers was, however, at its lowest point. Obviously, there's room for improvement by the two chambers, as there are many bills in the mill still waiting to be processed to law for good governance.
Now, Obola Hall says 3 years on, less than a steering considering the bickering between the executive arm and the National Assembly. It's a fact that there is no love lost between the two arms. And sadly, it's the common man on the street that bears the brunt. An instance is the unnecessary delay in the budget passage.
Arisha Monday tweets, now with all fairness, the 8th National Assembly has done well to a large extent, but Nigerians want to know what they are doing about contract jobs in our banks and federal government establishments, as well as a high cost of governance, particularly in the executive arm of government. All right, so those are the tweets that we have in the meantime. Before we bring in our other two guests, one point that I would like the honorable members to speak to, it's not been touched on, probably just discussed in general along with the business and economic environment. The Nigerian economy was in recession for the most part of 2016 and 2017. What was the role of the National Assembly in addressing the recession?
Well, thank you. Definitely, you recall, I think when we came back from recess, sometimes early 2017? Yes. Of course, there was a lot of hue and cry as we came back, because we've gone back to our constituents and we could see very clearly that the situation is terrible. So when we came back, there was a motion that was raised, and arising from that motion, the Honorable Minister of Finance was invited, and it was on the floor of the Senate that she said, well, having seen two quarters with negative growth, technically Nigeria was in recession. Now we went ahead to have a very robust discussions on the state of the economy, and I recall vividly we came up with about 22 recommendations that we passed on to the executive. And gladly, I would say that during the presentation of the 2018 budget, Mr. President was magnanimous in admitting that those recommendations went a long way in helping the executive to take decisions that help us to move the country out of recession. And I think the high point was the fact that we were able to come up with one clear fact. There was no correlation or coordination between the fiscal and the monetary policies. And I think that came out very clearly, and we gave some recommendations on what government needs to do to ensure that there is some harmony, and I think that has gone a long way in helping government to understand what needs to be done. Now, that does not end there, because I also recall some of the laws that we actually had to look at, like the issue of the collateral registry and the credit bureau. All these were part of the top priority economic bills that we actually identified, and I think their passage went a long way in helping people who are in business to be able to have access using their collateral, items which they register in the collateral registry. And I think the growth in the collateral registry is a very strong pointer to the fact that that was an issue that needed to be resolved, and it was resolved in the affirmative, and it has actually helped to move the small, micro, and medium enterprises towards the path of contributing to economic growth and development.
All right, 22 recommendations to the presidency. And of course, I believe that the House of Representatives also contributed to the 22 recommendations.
Earlier, I mentioned about sectoral debates. We invited ministers. They came on the floor of the House to tell us the policies of government, and so that we can be able to see which direction we could follow, which advice we could give, and where there are laws that need to be amended in order to make the business environment very suitable. We listened to them, and most of the ministers at least came, and they gave us their blueprint. They told Nigerians the policies they have, and we looked at it. After we had a cleanup, the Speaker set up a committee, special committee on this economic recession. And it was headed by Dr. Boriande. It was a very great one, where they interface with key stakeholders in the economy, and then some academics. I think when it was, the highlight was that the vice president was in attendance in one of the meetings, and they sat down, and then I can tell you that we have collected a very good report, and that's been submitted on the plenary, and we get back some of our recommendations to the executive, and that's together we've been able to get out of this recession.
All right, thank you very much. Emeka, sorry, Wango, let's bring you in again. In spite of some of the positive accomplishments of the National Assembly, some of which you've touched on, of course, plus some of the challenges that they've had, some analysts believe that the National Assembly continues, as it were, to suffer some reputational deficits, and this oftentimes beclouds the proper perception of their achievements, and therefore the support that they will require from their constituents. What do you think is at play here?
Well, I've continually made this point that it's the part of the challenge that the National Assembly has is the overhang of clowning that takes place regularly within some of its members. There is a lot of drama that goes on that offends the sensibilities of right-thinking people who know these things to be drama. And calling attention to it often makes it look like, oh, you are opposing the National Assembly. The good work that very hard-working members of the National Assembly do is being blighted daily by some of these actions. And I think it's important that there is some self-introspection by the National Assembly. It is not okay for members of the National Assembly to follow their leader who is being tried, who is in court for corruption. You get into bosses.
Alleged corruption.
Alleged corruption. But we just suspended the DG of SEC. We suspended the DG of SEC for alleged fraud. We suspended him from office. He's left office. You follow a man who is being tried for alleged corruption, you stop legislative activities, and you fill up the court. The reason for that is because we do not ask questions as to how many times you sit. Citizens have not been able to place tracking on your sitting, how many times do you sit within the legislative year? This oversight that you claim you go for, where did you go? How many times do you go for committee meetings? That openness is not yet there. Until citizens are able to track some of those kind of activities will not be happening. That's important. Somebody is ill. I don't know where it claims to be ill. A senator claims to be ill, gets to the hospital, then the National Assembly collapses into that hospital. I don't know which part of the world that happens. If you talk about bringing ridicule ridiculing our democracy, that is what ridicules our democracy. That is the point that needs to be taken. The second important point is that this idea that you have people who have been governors, many of them being governors, many being deputy governors, the idea of questioning is alien to them. They don't think they should be questioned for anything. They don't think they should be interrogated for anything. They don't think they owe anybody any explanation. And so when there's an occasion in which you are invited for questioning, then there is need, you begin to think that why should you, a whole distinguished senator of the Federal Republic, but you do not have immunity. You are, if it is something that is criminal, you have responsibility to answer to it. And answer in a way that brings confidence, public confidence to the institution that you represent. That's not happening. So we've seen at every point in time, and I remember vividly, in 2014, the leader of the Senate was invited by the police, special fraud unit of the police. The explanation then was that, oh, the reason why they are following me up is that I moved the motion for to deal with the subsidy cabal. That was the response. It is not that no, I'm innocent. I am not responsible for this. There is always an answer to the challenges that we face. So bringing ridicule to the institution is first and foremost a challenge that the National Assembly has to deal with. And if they deal with that, public confidence in the institution will continue to rise. More importantly also is the issue of budgeting. We keep sweeping it under the carpet. Any leader of the any managing director of an MDA in Nigeria will tell you that National Assembly, Jega came and spoke in the Democracy Day lecture. Jega was former vice chancellor of Bayero University. Jega was former chairman of INEC and made that huge allegation. It has implication for how I see the members of the National Assembly and the work that they do. And many Nigerians know that to be true as well. So the point that I'm making is that right. If you put yourself, if you don't carry yourself with dignity, if you don't carry yourself with self-respect, people will not hold you.
Thank you very much indeed. Actually, you have raised a number of critical issues as far as this conversation is concerned. And we would like to get down to Benin. And I would like also Professor Osadolo to take it from where he stopped with respect to the behavioral pattern of members of National Assembly, the drama, the unfolding drama, week in, week out, if you like, that takes place there. So now, what is your take on this particular aspect of not mixing way of life, your personal way of life, to legislative matters?
Well, I think very clearly that the Central Legislature is a law-making body, and everyone should understand that. The National Assembly is not concerned about building schools, bridges, hospitals, universities, and all of that. It's a law-making body. And as a lawmaking body, it has clearly defined constitutional roles. The first, of course, is to ensure that there is peace, there is order, there is good governance in the country. The second is the controlling of the finances of the state. The third has to do with the check on the actions of government and ministries and departments and agencies. And of course, the fourth one has to do with oversight functions, for which the Assembly has several committees to look into specific problems affecting this nation, specific problems affecting governance, specific problems affecting the work that they do. And as a follow-up to that, the National Assembly has the Nigerian Institute for Legislative Studies, which has been established to provide quality academic and professional research, policy analysis, training, documentation, etc. And so the National Assembly is not bereft of assistance from experts and individuals that will tell them what to do. However, starting from yesterday, we know too well that the next 1 year is going to be very turbulent for the National Assembly. Extremely turbulent. if I may be allowed to speak on what happened yesterday at the National Assembly, the 10 resolutions that were passed that also threatened the impeachment of the president was a great mistake. Those are not impeachable offenses. And I'm beginning to wonder the democratic or legislative behavior of those members which led to the declaration of those 10-point resolutions. The truth is that do they expect the president, for example, to pass vote of confidence on the Senate president and the Speaker of the House of Reps, which is one of the 10 points? Do they expect the president, for example, to liaise with ECOWAS Parliament and other international organizations to ensure the survival of democracy in Nigeria? Or matters that are related to security and survival of the nation? I don't think that the National Assembly did what was right yesterday. So we're looking at their performance, we're looking at their behavior, we're looking at their patriotism. What is the attitude towards understanding the problems of this country? To push those problems to the president, that if he doesn't act, he will be impeached. It's a threat, and it's not good enough. They should have realized that they needed the time to return to the chambers, both chambers of both chambers of the National Assembly, Senate and House of Reps, to go and reflect on those issues, not hurriedly doing what they did yesterday. I'm sure Nigerians will soon begin to react, and newspapers, editorials will also begin to react to those 10-point resolutions. But the critical thing here is that all of us are stakeholders. In fact, the sovereignty is derived from the people. So the people are more of the stakeholders than those in the National Assembly. And therefore, the issue of stakeholders does not relate only to civil society organizations, but to the people. Let them realize that their responsibilities and the assessment of their performances will be based on the security of Nigerians collectively. Secondly, the welfare of Nigerians, the happiness of Nigerians. How happy are we Nigerians with this government? Thirdly, it will be based on what I also describe as issues related to their liberty, the fundamental rights of Nigerians. When we look at all of this, some issues become very clear in assessing the National Assembly. This is the first time in the history of the Fourth Republic that the opposition has found its way to the leadership of the National Assembly. The opposition has found its way to the presidency. Yet, they are squandering the goodwill of the electorate concerning those in government at this point in time. National Assembly seems to think, or its leadership seems to give us the impression that they are not prepared for governance at this time. I'm not saying they are not good in governance, but at this critical time in Nigeria's history, let us look back. Not the aborted Third Republic, look at the Second Republic, look at the First Republic, and look at the debates in the National Assembly of those republics. Go and read the hazards of debates and see some challenging ideas, challenging issues that they were addressed in relation to national development agenda, and our national interest. And I strongly believe that this National Assembly, in the next 1 year, should begin to reflect on all of this. They have my sympathy and support in terms of the role they are expected to play. But Nigerians expect too much from them. They expect a legislature who does not control budget to build some constituency projects in their areas. We expect so much from them. And that is why I think that this problem has created a dilemma for members of the National Assembly.
Right, once again, thank you very much, Professor Osadolo. We'll come back to get your closing thoughts now. Distinguished Senator Sabi and Honorable Namdas, you'll listen to the two guests. There are a number of issues on the table which you would like to respond to. In particular, the reputational challenge that the National Assembly continues to face, in spite of, as has been acknowledged in the tweets and what is fairly obvious, some of the good assertions that the National Assembly members themselves have made.
Well, thank you very much. I quite appreciate all the points being raised, but let me hasten to say that some of them are not totally true. They are a little bit misplaced. You see, I can understand somebody feeling that a particular person is being dragged somewhere and his colleagues are giving him support. Let me say very clearly that the difference here is that is the leader. That is the person Nigerians or the senators. And if you look at the leadership issue in the National Assembly, it is purely limited to those who are in the National Assembly. Who becomes the speaker, who becomes the Senate president is the business of the senators and the members of the House of Representatives. Now, for us, I think from beginning, everybody will agree that when the leadership emerged, there were issues. And we believe that is the person the senators wanted, that is the person the members of the House of Reps wanted. And everything that happened subsequently was as a fallout of that particular selection process. And I think that is why you saw solidarity. Now, at any point in time, we are all social beings. I don't think there is any social structure or system where a member of that system will be affected by anything, positive or negative, and there will be no sympathy from members of that same unit. And I don't think it is out of place. And doing that does not in any way stop the fact that those who are going to prosecute somebody are going to do that. That perhaps somebody is, in detention and you go to visit him. Does that amount to, a crime?
Sabi Abdullahi. When such issue arises and the National Assembly collapses.
No, I don't think, I will not agree with you that we have collapsed the National Assembly. There is no one particular time that there was going to be, a case against the Senate president and the Senate was closed. I challenge anybody to go and bring the record where that happened. It never happened. It is individual's choice. They go there for maybe 1 hour, come back and do whatever they want to do. And I think this is not something that, to me, it is the choice of those people who took that decision. And if you look at the other aspect, you see, we have to really be fair to each other. In Nigeria today, most of the issues you see when you see unions, I was in public service, I was in the civil service up to 2014. There are many crises you see having to do with union that actually emanated from personal issues. And as a result of those personal issues, those institutions get closed. This is happening. I have all the facts. So the point I'm making here is we are never holding brief for anybody, but I don't think it is a crime that a colleague of mine is having a problem and I identify with him. I say sorry for what is happening to you. I stand with you. And at the end of the day, by our constitution, everybody who is being alleged to have committed something is considered innocent until proven guilty. And when he's proven guilty, he will serve the term. There is nothing we can do to stop anybody. Nigerian constitution does not allow retrospective law. And the moment somebody is already before the law, there is nothing you can do to stop the law from taking its course. So I think it's very important that we achieve, we identify this. And for me, I'm a human being. I have my own conscience. And I think it is not out of place where a colleague of mine or anybody who is having a problem, you sympathize with him, it becomes a crime. I don't see that becoming a crime.
There is also now, the unrebutted allegation by Professor Jega about
I'm coming to that. I'm coming.
Lawmakers engaging in shakedowns.
I'm coming to that. Please, let's get one fact clear. Allegations remain allegations. And I think our response was, please, if you have people who have committed this, please report them to the appropriate authority. Let the law take its course. We are not in any way condoning anybody who is found wanting by the law for the law to take its course. We are not in any way condoning that. And I think that is a very important point to make. But you see, as far as I know, some of these points that are being said, it's as if when you want to get popular, just look for the National Assembly and start abusing. That is what is beginning to happen. And let me say one thing. All of us as senators and House of Rep members, we didn't drop from the sky. We are a product of the Nigerian society. We went to election. People saw the need to vote you, and they voted you in. And that is why election comes in after a particular period. 2019 is in the corner. Only God knows those who will return to their seat. Because since 1999, many people have come and gone. And there are people who have remained consistently from their constituents. People vote them in. And what I want to say is that, you see, it's easy for me to stay by the side and just accuse other people. And I refuse to present myself.
All right,
it's important that the good people should please present themselves so that they can crowd out the bad people in the National Assembly. That's my challenge to everybody.
You've spoken very interestingly. But the perspective of Nigeria, or some Nigerians actually, on this matter, is that when you give someone solidarity, for whatever reason that it is, it means a kind of support to the person. So what's your reaction to this?
Let me come in here. First, let's ask this question. For example, our president, that we all cherish, at one point was sick. He was flown out of this country. He went for treatment. And we saw some members, some ministers went to visit him. Will we say that the Federal Executive Council was collapsed because some few, 3, 4 people went to US to see the well-being of the president? Is it wrong for somebody who worked with the president to feel, okay, my boss is outside this country and he's not doing well? And is it wrong for me to come and identify with my boss? Most so, he's the leader of this country. So if you go there, what offense have you committed? Now, so I feel that in the sitting, we can never sit when we don't have a quorum, both in the Senate and in the House of Representatives. It will be an illegal sitting. So for any sitting to take place, there's already a quorum. So I want to say that people should not emphasize on this idea of people going to court. If senators go to court, will the Senate influence the judge to take decision against the person you are prosecuting?
Does it happen in other clients? That's the question.
No, it happens. I have just given you an example. It's happened with our president. So which example do you want more than the one I'm telling you now? And what is wrong when somebody go to pay a visit to the president to see his well-being? So what is wrong? Even people who in your office in NTA, today, if one of your staff is sick, you will still find 3, 4 people going to that same hospital to go and pay visit. Does that mean you are closing shop in NTA just because one of your colleagues is sick?
Good Morning Nigeria continues
now
to
let me
Professor Jega.
Yes, let me
Professor
now
Jega,
let me respond to Professor Jega, because you have seen that I have tried this one. Let me ask you specifically. If you can play the clip of Jega. Jega mentioned that he has spoken to some few chief executives, but few of them, including university vice chancellors, who are claiming that chairmen are notorious for taking bribes. And I want to respect, I want Nigerians to listen to this. Go to all the universities in Nigeria. One of the professors is a contributor to this program. He's listening to me. 99%, if not 100% of the universities in Nigeria generate internally IGR. Some generate up to 5 billion. Because I'm a member of the National Assembly, I sit on some of these committees. When they sit, when they generate this revenue, by law, you are supposed to remit 25% of this to the coffers of the to the federation. And then you are supposed to now come with this budget and get back to the committee that oversights you to appropriate it. But people will raise 5 billion, spend 5.2 billion, even claiming that, look, we are owing government. This, and so when Jega said he spoke to professors, what of the thing is to blackmail us so that we cannot do the oversight, because somebody so credible within the Nigerian society said we are taking bribes, so we must not go and oversight. And I asked another question, because he was not the only person. Even Kojuela mentioned that. I said, look, if you are in government, by the time you are chairman of INEC, since you are seen to be credible, you fought for democracy when you were as president. I will appreciate that. We are your students. But when you sat and you have a committee that oversights you, at the time, how many people you gave bribe to? Why didn't you become so popular to have mentioned those names? Because Nigerians cannot wait for people 3 years after to be writing books, to be presenting papers, so that we call them heroes. I said it today, just like my Oga is here now, the civil society man is here. If I have demanded any bribe from anybody, don't wait for 3 years to write books. Don't wait till I finish my tenure for you to present paper. Confront the challenge now to help President Buhari fight corruption. X, Y, and Z came and demanded for money. And this is this. You telephone him, took it to ICPC. And on the final note, EFCC is on record. Came and said they have investigated 2015 election. they came out with a report and submitted it to INEC. INEC, that Jega was chairman, that the 2015 election came out that 23 billion naira was used to bribe INEC officials to come out with the outcome of the elections across Nigeria. INEC said, no. It was not 23 billion. A national officer of INEC came and gave a press briefing check that it was 3 billion that our members collected bribe in 16 states. Don't allow me, let me land this one. 16 states, they took bribe. When they took the bribe, they suspended, as I speak to you now, 200 INEC staff are on suspension or interdiction. So if Jega was to give advice or to give example, he should have cited example of INEC.
All right, Honorable Namdas. Honorable Namdas, yes.
Let me say one thing.
Yeah,
the fallacy here is that we overgeneralize. Now, let me cite an example. There was a professor that was alleged to have demanded for sex for mark. Are we going to be fair to all professors in Nigeria University if we say all professors demand for sex to give mark?
All right, distinguished senator Sabi. Yeah, we have noted your point. But there is a case. There is generalizing. There is a case, gentlemen. We know that there is a case that is ongoing with regard to subsidy issues some years earlier when a member of the National Assembly was demanding for some gratification, and I think he had put the dollars in his cap. You know, he was calling the name of his aide. I'm sure you gentlemen, we have whatever time it was. We know the names of those persons. But regardless, gentlemen, would like to appreciate all of you. We are pressed for time now. We congratulate the National Assembly on the
there are many Nigerians who are also
on 3 years. On 3 years, we also know that in the course of the 3 years, particularly much more recently, the National Assembly has lost some of its members. May their souls rest in peace. Gentlemen, we'd like to appreciate you. From our Benin Network studios, we were joined by Professor of History and International Studies at University of Benin, where he's also Dean, Professor Benson Osadolo. Thanks a lot for being on Good Morning Nigeria today. We also would like to thank our regular guests on Good Morning Nigeria, Ezewa Wago, always, of course, firing from the hips, Chairman, Partners for Electoral Reforms. Thank you very much, Ezewa Wago. And our appreciation also to Honorable Abdul Razak Namdas, Chairman, House Committee on Media and Publicity. I'm sure he will read law after this if he hasn't read law yet, so that he will take it off from there. And our appreciation also to the Senate Committee Chair on Media and Public Affairs, distinguished Senator Aliu Sabi Abdullahi. Thanks a lot for being on Good Morning Nigeria.
Pleasure.
All right, so let's go over now to our sports desk. I hope we can take that story of the major upset yesterday at Roland Garros against Novak Djokovic.